Hey guys, welcome to Relationship Stories with Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. I never thought I'd be the type of person to get into a heated argument over property rights, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you. My name's Jack, and this is the story of how a simple summer barbecue turned into a neighborhood showdown that I'll never forget. It all started on a scorching Saturday in July. I'd recently moved into my dream home, a cozy ranch-style house on a spacious 5-acre lot just outside the city limits. The property was perfect, far enough from the hustle and bustle for peace and quiet, but close enough to civilization that I didn't feel like a hermit. Best of all, it wasn't part of any homeowners association. I'd heard horror stories about homeowners associations and their draconian rules, so I made sure to steer clear when house hunting. After a month of unpacking and settling in, I decided it was high time to throw a housewarming party. I invited a mix of old friends, new neighbors, and co-workers, promising them a day of good food, cold drinks, and summer fun. The morning of the party, I was up at the crack of dawn, setting up tables, hanging fairy lights in the trees, and firing up the grill. By noon, the smell of sizzling burgers and hot dogs filled the air, and my first guests started to arrive. "Jack, my man," called out my buddy Mike as he strolled up the driveway, a six-pack in each hand. "This place is awesome. How'd you score such a sweet deal?" I grinned, taking one of the six-packs from him. "Just got lucky, I guess. Come on in, grab a plate. The party's just getting started." As the afternoon wore on, more and more people showed up. The backyard was soon filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of beer bottles. Kids splashed in the inflatable pool I'd set up, while adults lounged in lawn chairs, catching up and enjoying the summer sunshine. It was exactly the kind of laid-back, friendly gathering I'd envisioned when I bought the place. Around 3 p.m. I was manning the grill, flipping a fresh batch of burgers, when I noticed a commotion near the front of the house. Curious, I handed the spatula to Mike and made my way through the crowd to see what was going on. As I rounded the corner of the house, I saw a middle-aged man in pressed khakis and a polo shirt standing at the edge of my driveway. His arms were crossed, and he was glaring at my guests with an expression of utter disapproval. Something about his stance and the way people were backing away from him set off alarm bells in my head. "Excuse me," I called out as I approached. "Can I help you with something?" The man's head snapped towards me, his scowl deepening. "Are you the owner of this property?" he demanded. I nodded, trying to keep my tone friendly despite the growing tension. That's right. I'm Jack. And you are?" "Gerald Hawkins," he replied, drawing himself up to his full height, which admittedly wasn't very impressive. "I'm the president of the Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association." I blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry, but there must be some mistake. This property isn't part of any homeowners association." Gerald's face reddened. "Nonsense. All properties in this area are part of our association, and I'm here to inform you that you're in violation of several of our bylaws." Now it was my turn to frown. "Look, Mr. Hawkins, I think you're mistaken. When I bought this place, it was explicitly stated that it wasn't part of an homeowners association. I made sure of that." "Well, you were misinformed," Gerald snapped, "and ignorance is no excuse for breaking the rules. This gathering," he gestured dismissively at my party, "is in clear violation of our noise ordinances and event policies. You need to shut it down immediately." I could feel my blood beginning to boil, but I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm not shutting anything down. This is my property, and I'm not part of your homeowners association. You have no authority here." Gerald's eyes narrowed. "I don't think you understand the seriousness of this situation, young man. If you don't comply, we'll be forced to take action. Fines, liens on your property. We have ways of dealing with troublemakers." By this point, a small crowd had gathered around us, watching the confrontation with a mix of curiosity and concern. I could see my neighbors, Tom and Sarah, whispering to each other and shooting worried glances my way. "Look," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "I don't want any trouble, but I know my rights, and I know that this property is not part of your homeowners association. If you have some proof that says otherwise, I'd be happy to see it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're trespassing on private property." Gerald's face turned an even deeper shade of red. "Trespassing? How dare you? I am a respected member of this community, and I will not be spoken to in this manner." I stood my ground, crossing my arms to mirror his stance. "Mr. Hawkins, I've asked you politely to leave. This is your last warning before I call the police." For a moment, I thought Gerald might actually explode. He opened and closed his mouth several times, seemingly at a loss for words. Finally, he jabbed a finger in my direction. "This isn't over. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." With that, he spun on his heel and stormed off down the driveway. As soon as he was out of sight, I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The tension in the air seemed to dissipate, and I could hear murmurs of conversation starting up again among my guests. Mike appeared at my side, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay, man? Who was that guy?" I shook my head, still processing what had just happened. "Some homeowners association president who thinks he owns the place. Don't worry about it. Let's get back to the party." But as I turned to head back to the grill, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Little did I know, Gerald's intrusion was just the beginning of a battle that would consume my summer and test the limits of my patience and my legal knowledge. The rest of the party went off without a hitch, but Gerald's visit had cast a shadow over the event. As my guests left, many of them expressed concern about the confrontation. "Are you sure you're not in the Homeowners Association, Jack?" my neighbor Tom asked as he was leaving. Gerald can be a real hard-ass, but he usually knows what he's talking about when it comes to property boundaries. I assured Tom that I was certain, but his words planted a seed of doubt in my mind. What if there had been some mistake with the paperwork when I bought the house? Could I somehow have ended up in a Homeowners Association without realizing it? That night, after cleaning up the last of the party debris, I sat down at my computer and started digging. I pulled up my property deed, purchase agreement, and every other document I could find related to the house. I spent hours poring over the fine print, looking for any mention of an homeowners association or community association. By the time I finally crawled into bed, my eyes were burning from staring at the screen, but I was more certain than ever, my property was not part of any homeowners association. The next morning, I woke up to find an official-looking envelope stuck in my front door. My heart sank as I tore it open and read the contents. It was a notice from the Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association, listing a series of violations from my party and demanding that I pay $500 in fines within 30 days. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, crumpling the paper in my fist. This was getting out of hand. It was time to fight back. My first step was to call the real estate agent who had helped me buy the house. Linda picked up on the third ring, her cheerful voice a stark contrast to my frazzled state. "Jack, how are you enjoying the new place?" she chirped. "Well, that's actually why I'm calling," I replied, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "I'm having some issues with a local homeowners association. They're claiming my property is part of their association, but I was certain it wasn't when I bought it. Can you confirm that for me?" I heard the clacking of a keyboard as Linda pulled up my file. "Let's see here. Ah, yes. I remember your case specifically because you were so adamant about avoiding homeowners associations. I can confirm with 100% certainty that your property is not part of any homeowners association. It's completely independent." Relief washed over me. "Thank you, Linda. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Would you be willing to provide a written statement to that effect? I have a feeling I might need it." "Of course," she agreed. "I'll email it to you this afternoon. Is there anything else I can help with?" I thanked her and hung up, feeling more confident. Armed with Linda's confirmation, I decided to take a more proactive approach. I drafted a polite but firm letter to the Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association, explaining that there had been a misunderstanding and that my property was not under their jurisdiction. I included a copy of the relevant section of my deed and asked them to remove me from their records. A week passed with no response. I was starting to hope that maybe Gerald and his homeowners association had realized their mistake and decided to let the matter drop. But on Saturday morning, as I was enjoying my coffee on the front porch, I spotted a familiar figure marching up my driveway. Gerald Hawkins had returned, and this time he wasn't alone. A tall, thin man in an expensive-looking suit walked beside him, carrying a briefcase. My stomach churned as I realized this must be the Homeowners Association's lawyer. I set down my coffee cup and stood up, bracing myself for another confrontation. "Good morning, gentlemen. What can I do for you?" Gerald's face was set in a smug expression. "Mr. Thompson, this is Mr. Elliot Benson, the attorney for Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association. We're here to discuss your ongoing violations and refusal to comply with our regulations." I raised an eyebrow. "I thought I made it clear last time that this property is not part of your homeowners association. Did you not receive my letter explaining the situation?" Mr. Benson stepped forward, his voice smooth and practiced. "Mr. Thompson, we've reviewed your letter and the documentation you provided. However, our records show that this property has been part of the Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association since the development was first established. Your personal understanding of the situation doesn't change the legal reality." I could feel my temper rising, but I forced myself to stay calm. "With all due respect, Mr. Benson, I think you're the ones misunderstanding the situation. I have confirmation from my real estate agent and my property deed that this land is not part of any homeowners association. You have no authority here." Gerald scoffed. "Real estate agents can make mistakes. Our records go back decades. You can't just decide not to be part of the homeowners association because you don't like the rules." "I didn't decide anything," I shot back. "This property was never part of your association. And unless you can prove otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Again? Again?" Mr. Benson's expression hardened. "Mr. Thompson, I advise you to reconsider your position. If you continue to violate homeowners association regulations and refuse to pay the fines you've incurred, we will be forced to take legal action. This could result in liens on your property or even foreclosure." I felt a chill run down my spine at the word foreclosure, but I stood my ground. "I think you're the ones who need to reconsider. You're threatening legal action based on rules that don't apply to me. That sounds an awful lot like harassment." Gerald's face flushed with anger. How dare you accuse us of harassment? We are simply trying to maintain the standards of our community. Standards that you agreed to abide by when you purchased this property. But I didn't agree to anything, I exclaimed, my patience finally snapping. I've shown you proof that I'm not in your homeowners association. You've shown me nothing but empty threats. Now, for the last time, get off my property before I call the police and report you for trespassing. Mr. Benson put a hand on Gerald's arm, stopping him from responding. We'll be in touch, Mr. Thompson. I suggest you consult with a lawyer of your own. With that, they turned and walked back down the driveway. As I watched them leave, I realized that this situation had escalated far beyond what I could handle on my own. It was time to bring in some professional help. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and started researching local lawyers who specialized in property disputes. After a few hours of phone calls and online reviews, I found someone who seemed promising. Maria Gonzalez, a feisty attorney with a reputation for taking on homeowners associations and winning. I managed to get an appointment with Maria for that afternoon. As I sat in her office, surrounded by law books and framed diplomas, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since this ordeal began. Maria listened intently as I recounted the whole story, from the party to the confrontations with Gerald to the threat of legal action. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Well, Mr. Thompson, she said, it sounds like you've got quite a situation on your hands. But I have good news for you. Based on what you've told me and the documents you've provided, I'm confident that Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association has absolutely no claim over your property. I let out a sigh of relief. That's great to hear. So what do we do now? Maria's smile widened. Now, we fight back. Hard. These bullies think they can intimidate you into compliance, but we're going to show them they picked the wrong guy to mess with. Over the next hour, Maria outlined her strategy. We would start by sending a cease and desist letter to the Homeowners Association, demanding that they stop all attempts to enforce their rules on my property and retract any fines or threats of liens. If they didn't comply, we would file a lawsuit for harassment and attempted fraud. But here's the really fun part, Maria said, her eyes gleaming. We're going to countersue for all your legal fees, plus damages for the stress and inconvenience they've caused you. By the time we're done, they'll wish they'd never heard the name Jack Thompson. I left Maria's office feeling energized and ready for battle. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal activity. Maria sent the cease and desist letter, which was promptly ignored by the Homeowners Association. So, true to her word, she filed the lawsuit. The day Gerald was served with the papers was one I'll never forget. I was working in my front yard tending to a flower bed when I saw the process server walk up to Gerald's house across the street. Even from a distance, I could see Gerald's face turn pale as he read the documents. When he looked up and saw me watching, I gave him a little wave. The sputtering noises he made as he slammed his front door were music to my ears. As the legal proceedings got underway, I started doing some digging of my own. I talked to other neighbors, especially those who lived on the outskirts of the development like me. To my surprise, I found out that I wasn't the only one Gerald had tried to bully into the Homeowners Association. Oh yeah, he tried that with us when we first moved in. My neighbor Lisa told me over coffee one morning. Kept insisting we were part of the Homeowners Association and threatening fines. We just ignored him and eventually he gave up. Why didn't you say anything when all this started with me? I asked, feeling a bit hurt. Lisa looked sheepish. Honestly, we were afraid of rocking the boat. Gerald can make life difficult when he wants to, but seeing you stand up to him, well, it's inspiring. Maybe it's time we all pushed back. Armed with this new information, I went back to Maria. She was thrilled. This is great, Jack. If we can get statements from your neighbors about similar experiences, it'll strengthen our case immensely. It shows a pattern of behavior from the Homeowners Association. As the lawsuit progressed, life in the neighborhood became tense. Gerald and his Homeowners Association cronies glared at me whenever our paths crossed, but they didn't dare approach me directly now that lawyers were involved. Some neighbors avoided me, clearly not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. But others, like Lisa and Tom, became closer friends, united in our stand against Homeowners Association overreach. Months passed, and finally, we had our day in court. I sat beside Maria in the courtroom, my palms sweaty as the judge entered. Gerald and Mr. Benson sat at the opposite table, looking far less confident than they had on my front porch. The trial itself was surprisingly quick. Maria presented our case methodically, showing my property documents, the testimony from my real estate agent, and statements from neighbors who had experienced similar harassment. She argued that the Homeowners Association had engaged in a pattern of trying to unlawfully expand their territory through intimidation and false claims. When it was the Homeowners Association's turn to present their case, it quickly became clear that they were in trouble. Their supposed record showing my property as part of the Homeowners Association turned out to be nothing more than a crudely edited map with my lot circled in red marker. Mr. Benson tried to argue that there had been a clerical error in my property documents, but the judge wasn't buying it. The coup de grace came when Maria called Gerald to the stand. Under her skillful cross-examination, he began to unravel. Mr. Hawkins, Maria began, her voice deceptively gentle, can you explain why you believed Mr. Thompson's property to be part of your homeowners association despite clear documentation to the contrary? Gerald shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Well, it's in the area. All the surrounding properties are part of the homeowners association. It just made sense. So you didn't actually check any official records before confronting Mr. Thompson and threatening him with fines and legal action? Well, no, but... Maria pressed on. In fact, Mr. Hawkins, isn't it true that you've made similar claims about other properties on the outskirts of your development, despite having no legal right to do so? Gerald's face turned red. Now, wait just a minute. Please answer the question, Mr. Hawkins, the judge interjected. Gerald deflated visibly. Yes, he muttered. But it was for the good of the community. These people need to follow the rules like everyone else. Even if they're not actually part of your community? Maria asked, raising an eyebrow. Gerald had no answer for that. In the end, the judge's ruling was decisive. Not only did he confirm that my property was not part of the Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association, but he also ordered the Homeowners Association to pay all my legal fees and awarded me damages for harassment. Furthermore, he mandated that the Homeowners Association undergo an independent audit to determine the true extent of their jurisdiction, and ordered them to cease all attempts to enforce their rules on non-member properties. As we left the courthouse, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Maria gave me a victorious smile and a firm handshake. Congratulations, Jack. You stood your ground and won. Not many people have the guts to take on an homeowners association like that. I grinned back. I couldn't have done it without you, Maria. Thank you. The ride home was surreal. After months of stress and uncertainty, it was all over. I had one. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw my neighbors Tom and Lisa hurrying over from across the street. We just heard, Lisa exclaimed. Jack, you did it. Tom clapped me on the back. You showed that old busybody what's what. The whole neighborhood's buzzing about it. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Thanks, guys. I'm just glad it's over. But as it turned out, the story wasn't quite over yet. Over the next few weeks, the fallout from the lawsuit rippled through the neighborhood. The independent audit of the Homeowners Association revealed that Gerald had been overstepping his authority for years, trying to enforce Homeowners Association rules on several properties that weren't actually part of the association. Many of my neighbors who had been intimidated into compliance were now standing up for themselves, emboldened by my victory. Gerald, unsurprisingly, was forced to resign as Homeowners Association president. I heard through the grapevine that he was selling his house and moving to a different neighborhood, one without an HOA association, ironically enough. The last time I saw him, he was supervising the movers, steadfastly avoiding eye contact with anyone on the street. As for me, life slowly returned to normal. My property remained blissfully Homeowners Association free, and I enjoyed my summer without any more surprise visits from overzealous officials. The lawsuit had eaten up a good chunk of my savings, but the damages awarded by the court helped offset that. More importantly, I had stood up for what was right and came out on top. One warm evening in late August, I decided it was time for another party. This time, I made sure to invite all my neighbors, even the ones who had sided with Gerald during the dispute. As the sun began to set, my backyard was once again filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and clinking glasses. Lisa raised her beer in a toast. To Jack, she called out, defender of property rights and slayer of Homeowners Association dragons. Everyone cheered, and I felt my face flush with embarrassment and pride. As I looked around at the smiling faces of my neighbors, many of whom I now considered good friends, I realized that this whole ordeal, as stressful as it had been, had brought our community closer together. Tom sidled up to me, a mischievous glint in his eye. So Jack, he said, now that you're a certified Homeowners Association slayer, what's next? Taking on City Hall? I laughed and shook my head. I think I've had enough excitement for one summer. From now on, I'm sticking to quiet barbecues and minding my own business. Well, Tom replied with a grin, if you ever decide to run for mayor, you've got my vote. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, many of them stopped to thank me again for standing up to Gerald and the Homeowners Association. It was a bit overwhelming, being treated like some kind of neighborhood hero, but it felt good to know that my actions had made a positive difference in people's lives. After the last guest had gone and I was cleaning up, I took a moment to stand in my backyard and look up at the stars. The summer breeze rustled through the trees, and in the distance I could hear the faint sound of crickets chirping. This was why I had bought this place, for moments of peace like this. I thought back to that first confrontation with Gerald, how close I had come to giving in just to avoid conflict. I was glad I had found the courage to stand my ground. It hadn't been easy, and there were moments when I doubted myself, but in the end, it was worth it. As I headed inside, I made a mental note to invite Maria to my next barbecue. After all, none of this would have been possible without her help. And who knows, maybe next summer would bring new adventures. But for now, I was content to enjoy my home, my land, and my freedom from Homeowners Association rules. The whole experience had taught me valuable lessons about standing up for what's right, the importance of community, and the power of persistence. It had also given me a newfound appreciation for the quiet life I had sought when I bought this place. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I couldn't help but smile. Life outside the Homeowners Association was good, and I wouldn't have it any other way. In the months that followed, our neighborhood underwent some significant changes. Without Gerald's iron-fisted rule, the Homeowners Association became a much more reasonable organization. The new president, a retired judge named Sandra, took a more collaborative approach, focusing on community building rather than rule enforcement. I found myself getting more involved in neighborhood affairs, not as part of the Homeowners Association, but as an independent voice. Sandra often reached out to me for input on decisions that might affect non-Homeowners Association residents, and I appreciated the inclusive gesture. My case had also attracted some attention beyond our little corner of the world. I received calls from local news stations wanting to do stories on the man who defeated the Homeowners Association. While I was flattered, I turned down most of these requests, preferring to keep a low profile. However, I did agree to speak at a community meeting in a nearby town where residents were considering forming an Homeowners Association. I shared my experience and cautioned them about the potential for abuse of power. A homeowners association can be a useful tool for maintaining community standards, I told them, but it's crucial to have clear boundaries and accountability measures in place. As for my own property, I continued to enjoy my homeowners association free status. I painted my house a shade of blue that probably would have given Gerald a conniption, planted a vegetable garden in my front yard, and even installed a small wind turbine to supplement my electricity, all without needing anyone's approval. But the best part was the sense of community that had blossomed in the wake of the lawsuit. Neighbors who had once been strangers now regularly gathered for potlucks, game nights, and impromptu front yard chats. We had a shared experience that had brought us together, and we were all determined to maintain that connection. 1 year after the fateful party that started it all, I threw another summer bash. This time, there were no uninvited Homeowners Association presidents crashing the event. Instead, my yard was filled with friends, neighbors, and even a few familiar faces from the courthouse. Maria had taken me up on my invitation and brought along the judge who had presided over our case, now retired. As the sun set on another perfect summer day, I raised my glass for a toast. To good neighbors, fair laws, and the freedom to live as we choose, within reason, of course. The responding cheer was loud enough that I was briefly worried we might be violating a noise ordinance. Then I remembered, there was no Homeowners Association to complain about it. I grinned and took a sip of my drink, savoring not just the taste, but the sweet flavor of victory and independence. Looking back, I realized that what had started as a simple desire for a quiet life had turned into something much more meaningful. I had not only defended my own rights, but had also sparked a positive change in my community. It wasn't the peaceful summer I had initially envisioned, but it had been transformative in ways I never could have imagined. As the party continued around me, I felt a deep sense of contentment. This was home, not just the house and land, but the community we had built together, and no Homeowners Association could ever take that away. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.